Recently, I've been trying to figure out how to produce my own commercial Eurorack module. Eurorack modular synths are a way to make music if you have lots of money to spend on hardware. I've had to figure out lots of new things around electronic hardware design and production, so I thought I'd share my journey with you, even though I've still got a lot to learn. My module doesn't actually play music, but it lets you plug your modular into an iPhone and control the live visuals so that you can make a stage show look more exciting. This does mean that as well as producing a piece of hardware, I also have to build an iOS app. My hardware design is relatively simple because the software does most of the heavy lifting, and unlike hardware, I've made loads of iOS apps over the years. I'm also keen, if I can, to release something that's environmentally friendly in terms of repairability, upgradability, and general shelf life, as if things weren't already complicated enough. My name's Michael Forrest, and this is Leaving the Laptop, a series about playing live electronic music without using a laptop. We've got a lot to cover here, but I'll try to be as quick and clear as I can. So first I'll explain a bit more about what I'm building, then I'll talk about how I'm trying to be environmentally conscious, my use of the open source Arduino platform, how I've designed the iOS app, designing the PCB, front panel, and all those physical construction requirements like machining, drilling, and soldering. Then I'll talk about scaling up production, marketing, before freaking out a bit and trying to figure out if this is actually worth doing at all. So stay tuned and be ready to hit me with some comments. 1. Overview. This is my current prototype of the module, which I definitely planned very well and put together really neatly. So this module has 5 inputs for different control signals, and those are used to control the fancy graphics in the app. So first we have a 1 volt per octave input for things like notes on a keyboard, so it'll be like dun 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 dun. Then we have a trigger input for things that are like bang, bang, bang. So like kick drums, snare drums, whatever you want to plug into there. Then we have a gate input for things like pressing and releasing a key on a keyboard. So you sort of like on, off, on, off, on, still on, off. Then we will have a clock input here. So this gets 96 little impulses per bar. So every second it's going to be like so this is how we synchronize everything to the right tempo. We have a reset input to use with the clock so that we just know where the bar started. So when it's you might just end up like offset if you don't have that reset signal. We send signals out to the phone via Bluetooth, so I guess there'll be a blue light here. Code sketches can react to on trigger, on gate rise, on clock pulse functions and other things like that, and some other variables to create fun visuals that sync nicely to the music. I have taken a different route to Teenage Engineering here, who are doing things with this game engine Unity, which is quite a meaty authoring environment. But to be honest, as a programmer, I've never really liked it. It does too much stuff you don't need, and then it's quite awkward to customize the stuff you do need. I have been following a couple of Instagram hashtags to see if people have done much on their OPZs, but honestly, I'm not seeing very much out there beyond the factory presets. I think code is a really expressive visual medium, and JavaScript is the most accessible programming language these days. And an iPhone can handle most graphics you throw at it these days as well, like particularly if WebGL shaders are used. There are loads of really deep JS libraries available for artists and game developers. And so far on this, I've been playing with p5.js, which is processing or open frameworks for web. And you can check out openprocessing.org to see what sorts of things people create. And Pixie.js, which is game-oriented and has lots of shaders out of the box. So for my app, JavaScript sketches using these frameworks can be written on the desktop and will automatically sync via iCloud or Dropbox, or you can tinker with them directly on the device. My module also has a phone mount so you can see what's being projected behind you. I mean, the whole point is you project these visuals as part of your live set. You attach a projector to your phone with an HDMI cable or via an Apple TV with AirPlay. And you can attach any number of arms to position the camera pointing at your gear if that's something you want to show off. 2. Sustainability. In a world of disposable electronics, it seems that the most environmentally defensible way to create hardware is to focus on repairability, upgradability, and reuse. So for a small shop like mine, the best way to do this seems to be to use off-the-shelf components, like Arduinos, wherever possible, avoiding custom chipsets and surface mount technology that requires specialized tools to maintain. That would make this product super hackable, upgradable, and reusable in all sorts of ways in the future. 3. Arduino stuff. Let me tell you about some of the technical challenges I've faced using the Arduino for this product so far and explain some of the early electronic engineering confusion that's tripped me up. In other Arduino Nano builds, I've found that the hardware ran a bit too slow, so it would slip out of time or miss drum triggers unless I used interrupt pins. But that limited me to only 2 inputs. I used the Mega for my prototype when I wanted to add more inputs, but obviously I didn't want to ship an Arduino Mega in my module, it's a bit overkill. Luckily, my friend Christian, creator of Beatflyer and WePop, which are 2 apps that let you create music-driven visuals for Instagram, put me in touch with his friend Ubi from inside Arduino, who helped me think about my design and also sent me a couple of Arduino Bluetooth-enabled modules to play with. These new modules are not only fast enough to handle quick clock and trigger inputs without using interrupt pins, but they're nice and small and include the Bluetooth connectivity I need without the extra component I was using before. Not to mention they have Wi-Fi, which opens up lots more possibilities for the future. A major stumbling block for me was figuring out how to map control voltages across different ranges. Basically, I got really confused about power supplies versus control voltage signals and had to learn about op-amps. Ubi from Arduino sent me this, and I looked at the open source mutable instrument circuit diagrams too. I only blew a couple of Arduinos figuring this out, but I think I've just about got the hang of it now. And if I just read the box, I could have saved myself a lot of confusion. 4. App design. Now let's talk about the app for a bit. If you remember, I'd been coding my visuals using Swift, which is energy efficient but inaccessible to anyone who isn't using Xcode to rebuild the entire app every time. I thought JS libs would be a good balance here, and even if it puts people off to start with, I can always build on this foundation in future and maybe even provide some sort of Max MSP style interface in future if I can keep this thing going. I want it to be really fast to edit and see changes, which means lots of iCloud or Dropbox sync if we're writing code on the desktop and checking it on the device. Connecting the phone to an external display is essential for this app to work. The idea is that you're watching a preview of what's going on behind you and the phone will show more controls than the projections. I'm still figuring out some performance problems where all the JS is running on both screens, which means that they A, get out of sync, and B, the phone gets ridiculously hot. But I think I have a good solution to this. And a lot of this is about finding the right design limitations, whether that's limiting to a certain number of inputs or fixing the aspect ratio and resolution of the graphics. I still need to figure out how to organize a live set and transition between sketches, since I've been mostly focused on one-off vignettes for Instagram at the moment. But anyway, moving on. 5. PCB design. I usually put together my circuit diagrams in Fritzing, but it was starting to do my head in how laggy it is, so I asked around about a more professional alternative and was pointed to Eagle, which is Autodesk's professional circuit diagram software. They have a really good licensing model, so for my product I can still use the free tier while I'm still learning. So after much scrolling through endless component lists in the editor, I managed to assemble this fairly basic circuit diagram. I'm excited about getting my first PCB printed, but I did find that when I started making edits after I'd created the first PCB, I got some weird error messages which sort of put me off a bit. I actually ended up putting this PCB design on the back burner while I assembled a proto board version. It took me a couple of days to do this, but I managed to assemble this version and was finally able to escape my breadboard prototype, and I freed up a lot of rack space in the process. 6. Panel design. I put together my front panel in Sketch, which is not really for print design at all, but you know, it's what I'm used to. I don't love my design yet though. Well, I do quite like the 5 different coloured icons, but I haven't really decided how I want to brand all this yet at all. Luckily, most Eurorack module designs are pretty functional, although again, mutable instruments set the standard, and I'd like to be able to follow in their footsteps here. It's cool though, I printed it out on a bit of paper and glued it to this aluminium plate to see how it feels to start with. 7. Construction, machining and all that. I recently binged all of Wintergatten's YouTube videos about his Marble Machine X build. I learned all about the wonders of CNC machines and CAD-based engineering. I spent a while looking at different hobbyist CNC machines with my studio mate, VJ Modular and fellow electronics maker Michael Speechley, but eventually we decided to do our initial experimentation using London Hackspace's facilities. Instead of spending £500 on a probably crap CNC machine, we decided to get a decent pillar drill instead, so we could at least drill neat holes and possibly do some manual milling. So I used that to drill my socket holes and the hole for the phone mount, but I had to do a bit of this little crappy PCB gluing thing to add a button because it was all I had. I forgot to put the sockets into the panel together before soldering to the board, so I had to do some pushing and pulling to get them to come through. So here's the prototype again. Let's call it an alpha build. Here it is in my Eurorack waiting on standby for some nice sketches. I actually still haven't made it up to Hackspace though. It's half an hour by bike and it's too cold right now. 8. Production. I have never made a piece of hardware before, so the ins and outs of hardware production and testing are a mystery to me. I love how Mutable Instruments stuff is all open source, so I've been paying attention to things in their source code, talking about things like factory test scripts and such like. Here's what I imagine would be involved in getting this thing produced, and correct me if I'm wrong. I guess I need to supply a factory with PCB designs and component lists, and they'll solder it all up and construct the modules, and then they run some sort of test scripts to double check things work as expected and then ship them to me, ideally in printed boxes that I've also supplied designs for. I know that if you do a short factory run in China, the likelihood is that they'll do a full-scale run and sell the rest of them locally under their own brand. That said, I'm not sure that that works for something this niche and app-dependent. I guess they might refuse to do a short run for just that reason. But there's, I guess, quite a few factories in China, so maybe I'll find one. Doing things this way would leave me with a load of inventory I have to store and shift after an initial capital investment that I might not even have. So ideally I'd line up distribution with places like London Modular and Schneidersladen, which I suppose couldn't be too difficult. There's not that many modular synth shops out there, are there? Another alternative is, though, that I make everything up in this room. Like, I order up some PCBs and components and make modules to order. My only concern with this is that if I do get successful, I could find myself soldering all day long and not having time for anything else. But the usual way to do this sort of thing these days is really to get pre-orders via Kickstarter for the best of both worlds, like the capital investment and guaranteed sales, combined with any marketing buzz generated by being on Kickstarter. So yes, it is competitive, but I'm comparing this to app development, which is really competitive. Of course, creating updates for Kickstarter backers is a job in itself, but again, I guess it's marketing that has to be done one way or another. I got a bit put off by all the cost estimation parts of the Kickstarter form, though. I'm really not sure how much money I need to do this. Another thing to talk about in the comments. 9. Marketing! You can't have a product without a website, and like Instagram ads. There's a whole marketing angle I've not even started to think about here, not to mention the website build, even if it is a relatively trivial thing for me to do myself, still takes precious time. And I'd want case studies and demos and partnerships with, like, I don't know, Beatflyer, Zach Lieberman, and influencer demos and a consistent Instagram presence to show off different sketches and shows. I've been doing a bit of this on my own Instagram, but if I'm soldering or coding or drilling all day, it's hard to find time to also be visually creative. 10. Give up! There still seem to be a lot of unknowns out there, which is naturally a bit scary. But I've been thinking about creating some sort of hardware device for a while now. I like Eurorack because it feels like an individual or boutique outfit can release something genuinely useful without having to create a big, all-purpose, polished consumer product with broad appeal. It feels like there's potential to prosper by creating a little part of a bigger system. But the bottom line is that I want this to make money. In my mind, it's been a medium-risk project to accompany my high-risk app production and even higher-risk music making. Being less scalable, but hopefully more profitable than both of those other activities. So the more scalable something is, i.e. the more it could go viral, the more other people you're in direct competition with. So with music, my distribution channels are exactly the same as all of the greatest artists of all time, living or dead. If people can choose between me and Stevie Wonder on Spotify, I'd better be really flipping good at music. And since nobody's heard of me, really lucky too. Next, there's app development. The barrier to entry is higher than for making music in some ways, but there are still millions of other people doing it, all releasing through the exact same channels, coming to customers through the exact same interface. Because it's apps, it's marginally easier to charge money for than for a song, but it's still tough. But again, if you get it right, you can go viral and be rich, and probably even richer than a famous musician. So there is that. So I'm trying to do something more down here in the scale, much less viral potential, but much less competition at the same time. Super niche, but I can charge like 200 quid each, and I'd only have to sell a few every month to live. Y Combinator, an incubator for app startups, actually cites lack of scalability as a reason that many startups do succeed. This doesn't have to mean hardware at all, but it's definitely one way to do it. I recently heard Darren Brown talking about how his skill is being able to look at things from other people's perspective, and I realised that with this product, with this series, I'm trying to get other people to see things from my perspective, but I'm not really meeting anyone where they are now. So my design is something that I want, but is it something that anybody else would be able to do the first thing with? Does this solve the problem of boring live electronic music performances for anyone but me? I mean, I've spent a long time coming to the conclusion that this is the best approach, modular synth connected to a powerful real-time graphics device for previewing and projecting. I'm trying to create my own little artistic medium here, really. But if art is something that has to change the world in order to exist, then this is more art than commerce. But I see some really interesting potential here, even if others, even influencers in this field don't yet. Yes, to bring people in, I need to meet them where they are. I need to meet you where you are. So, am I crazy? Is this something you want? Is this something that anyone's going to be able to use but me? Just, let me know in the comments below, and, maybe that's what this video is about. Just finding out if I'm crazy. Okay, that's it for this month, I think. If you're interested, I live streamed writing this script on Twitch and making the video. I've been streaming lots of things recently, programming, podcast editing, napping. I'll be hanging out there if you want to come and find me. Just follow so you get an alert when I come online. If not, subscribe so you don't miss my next monthly video here on YouTube. Alright, thanks for watching and I'll see you next month. Bye!